Neptune 1 ventured to the deep waters near the coastal city of Hyrule. The team uncovered a thriving marine ecosystem, reclaiming an area shaped by volcanic eruptions millions of years ago, creating unique adaptations in the species that now inhabit these waters.
Does the water on our planet actually come from outer space? What dangers lurk deep in the ocean? Things more dangerous than great white sharks, like unexploded weapons from World War II and massive underwater volcanoes ready to burst. These are the dark reasons NASA refuses to explore the deep sea. Let's kick things off with one of the most mind-bending reasons why NASA may be hesitant to fully explore the deep sea: the potential for extraterrestrial life. Now, what exactly do I mean by this specifically? Well, here's the thing. NASA believes that a lot of Earth's oceans actually came from asteroids that crashed into our planet billions of years ago. How do they know this? Well, the chemical composition of ocean water is quite similar to some of the oldest meteorites in the solar system. So it's plausible that the water we're swimming in now was delivered to us by asteroids billions of years ago. But it gets stranger. When these space rocks collided with Earth, they didn't just bring water, they also brought organic material that's been evolving in our oceans ever since. These materials might even be part of what gave rise to life on Earth. Now, maybe this is a stretch, but what if some of that organic material has continued to evolve in ways we're not ready for? With 95% of our oceans still unexplored, it's possible that we're not alone down there. There could be life forms lurking in the deep that have been evolving in isolation for millions of years, and NASA might want to keep that under wraps. Now let's get into the really spooky stuff. According to some rumors, NASA's 2022 Orpheus expedition may have encountered something in the deep sea, something they may not be willing to share. The mission, which was supposed to study the ocean depths for insights into space exploration, was actually looking in the Hadal Zone, the deepest area of the ocean, but some insiders believe that the team stumbled on something unsettling: a species of massive, never-before-seen marine life that could be hiding in the most extreme depths of the Earth. The story goes that the submersible spotted a creature so huge that one of the astronauts, Garrett Reisman, described its eye as being as big as a flying saucer. This next one's pretty explosive. An underwater volcano located off the coast of Tonga. It made headlines on January 15th of 2022 with an eruption so massive it sent shockwaves around the globe. The explosion was equivalent to 15 million tons of TNT, making it one of the most powerful volcanic events ever recorded. I mean, just look at this. It doesn't look real. It looks like Zeus's wrath on the Earth. This eruption didn't just blow a ton of steam into the air, it actually reshaped the ocean floor too. The area around the volcano was altered, creating a massive cavern that reaches down about 850 meters, or about 2,788 feet down into the Earth's crust. If it continues to deepen, we could be looking at some serious geological consequences. Now, NASA and other scientific organizations monitor volcanic activity pretty closely, but there's probably a good reason why they don't rush into these hot zones. The unpredictability of underwater volcanoes makes them extremely dangerous, and they could potentially trigger devastating events like tsunamis or earthquakes. Next up, let's talk about eddies, kind of like the ocean's version of black holes. Now, we all know black holes in space are terrifying, but did you know that the deep sea has something equally creepy? What you're looking at here is a massive eddy photographed with a NASA satellite back in 2011 off the coast of South Africa. Not something you'd want to get caught up in. Eddies are massive circular currents that can swallow up pretty much everything in their path. And they're not just tiny whirlpools either. I mean, some of them are pretty small, but others, as you've just seen, can get so big you can see them from space. And once you're caught in one like that, there's no escaping. These currents can last for hours, days, or even weeks. Unlike black holes, which might theoretically transport you to another dimension, an eddy's pull is much simpler. You just get sucked in and you drown. Now, NASA has investigated the deep sea to understand extreme environments, which also helps them prepare for deep space exploration. But here's where things get strange. There have been stories circulating about intelligent cephalopods in the ocean's depths. These creatures are said to have sabotaged equipment and even interacted with the submersibles exploring their their territory. Now, is this all just internet rumor? I mean, some of it maybe, but cephalopods like squids and octopuses are known to be rather intelligent animals. Octopuses can be particularly crafty, and the fact that there are now known to be massive-sized squids lurking in the ocean, maybe they could be just as dangerous for underwater exploration as they were for ships sailing the sea back in the day, leading to legends of giant squids pulling sailors into the depths of the water, never to be seen again.
For so long, we have looked for life in space within the parameters of what constitutes life to us: DNA, RNA, and nucleic acids. But there is a theory, the different kind of life theory, that states this is the reason why we haven't been successful in our search, because life outside of Earth does not need any of the things that we do to survive. Their cells get instructions in biochemical ways completely different from our own. Going off of this, one can assume that planets previously deemed as uninhabitable and therefore removed from the search area for extraterrestrial life might actually be the exact place where alien life forms could be found. The statement that only 1 in a million planets have the right combination of chemicals, temperature, water, days, and nights to support planetary life as we know it completely discounts planetary life as we don't. Extraterrestrials who operate on an incredibly different fundamental and chemical level than our own might be lurking right in our cosmic backyard, we just haven't been searching for them properly. The faraway theory is a pretty straightforward one. The reason we have yet to find aliens is because they are too far away and moving further away by the minute. Basically, the theory states that due to the expansion of the universe, galaxies are constantly moving further and further away from one another, and the further they become, the faster they move, which means it's highly likely that we miss that sweet spot of alien interaction due to the fact that our society was just too underdeveloped when aliens inhabited galaxies that were close enough to communicate with. Either that or humanity didn't miss it, but we did, because it already happened some 6,000 years ago, which would explain the pyramids and many ancient civilizations' fascinations with the stars. Either way, we're SOL for distance. But maybe we haven't found aliens yet because we haven't been communicating properly. Here's the thing. For the better half of a century, humanity has been leaking radio signals into space at such a rate that any intelligent life form within 100 light years of Earth would surely be able to pick up the signal. But as tech improves, these radio leaks reduce, and one day they might disappear altogether, and the Earth might fall back into radio silence. Perhaps the same is the case for other planets, and the reason we haven't been able to hear their radio signals and they haven't heard any of ours is simply because in the cosmic scope of time, the radio signals just don't last that long and our timing is off. In 1974, however, humanity did make a direct attempt at communicating with aliens by beaming an interstellar message out towards a globular cluster 25,000 light years away. The only problem is that for anyone to receive the message, they would have to be situated directly in the path of the beam. Not only that, but the message took less than 3 minutes to transit, meaning even if an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization was perfectly situated in the path, they would have had less than 3 minutes to detect the signal. While it seems unlikely, it is possible that in 1977 we got lucky enough to detect a beam coming from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization down to Earth. A momentary burst of energy known as the wow signal swept across the planet, but we have not been able to figure out its origin or been able to detect it since we heard it the first time. In 2012, however, we did send back a response, but we have yet to hear back from whoever sent the wow signal. Perhaps, though, the reason we have yet to interact with intelligent life forms is because the universe has filtered them out, and one day it will filter us out too. Basically, what I'm saying is that humanity and all other life forms have an expiry date that is pre-wired into our experience and that prohibits us from ever reaching the point of extraterrestrial communications and other planetary colonizations. Why? I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it's to protect the universe somehow. I mean, let's think about it. Let's say right right now is the perfect time for life to exist on Earth. And one day, long after we're gone, it will be the perfect time for life to exist on, say, Venus. If we had already found a way to migrate to Venus and subsequently developed it to our liking and then polluted it beyond repair, the life that was supposed to exist there after we had moved on to the next planet would have zero chance at survival. So maybe the expiration date encoded into each and every living being across the universe is to allow each and every being to have its moment in time to exist. Branching off of that theory, the Great Filter Theory, we have the self-destruction theory, which is similar but just a bit different because instead of the universe giving us an expiration date pre-coded into our existence, self-destruction theory states that life on every planet is destined to kill itself in order to protect the planet itself rather than the universe as a whole. Like I said, the theories are really similar, but one is a universal law and one is planetary preservation. Self-destruction theory comes from the Medea hypothesis, which is based off Medea from Greek mythology, who killed her offspring. Basically, our planet is Medea and we are the offspring. The very thing that gave us life is destined to kill us as we take away its own life force. An example of this is the Ice Ages, which those who follow the self-destruction theory would blame on an excess of plants, which absorbed an excess amount of CO2, which led to extreme global cooling, greatly damaging the integrity of life on Earth. Now we've come in. We've killed off a bunch of plants, we've warmed the Earth up, but we warmed it up too much, and we've killed off a bunch of other living things. And this, once again, has greatly damaged the integrity of life on Earth, meaning that at some point in time before we are able to achieve an intelligence level that allows us to communicate and commute to these aliens, something is bound to come in and kill off humanity. Do you see what I'm saying?
In 1975, a pilot and several passengers flying a private plane near Pine Gap's airspace saw something they would never forget. The facility had only started operating 5 years before. Everyone was wondering what the hell was really going on in there, and the passengers and crew were hoping they were gonna see something while flying overhead, and see something they did. A large white object appeared, taking off from the base at an incredibly high speed. The object moved so fast that it was nearly impossible for the witnesses to get a good look at it before it vanished into the sky. The pilot, upon landing, reported the sighting. They were told to wait for investigators, and when these investigators arrived, they supposedly told the group to keep their mouths shut about what they'd seen and to forget the incident entirely. Obviously, not all of them did, and if there wasn't already heavy speculation and controversy about this facility amongst the Australian public before, there certainly was now. Now, what exactly is the Pine Gap facility? Sitting right in the middle of the outback, not too far from the remote town of Alice Springs, officially it's known as the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap, and it's run by both the US and Australian governments. But what exactly goes on there? Like with any facility like this, there's the official answer and the more speculative ones. The facility is decked out with some serious tech. You know those big satellite dishes you see in movies? Pine Gap has plenty of them. They're used for all sorts of high-tech communication and surveillance activity. Officially, the facility is involved in intelligence gathering, satellite tracking, and missile detection. It's always been a controversial place though. It's seen a number of protests over the years, and many of them aren't even necessarily to do with the rumors and conspiracies, but they certainly don't help with its image. Pine Gap is rumored to be a secret site for advanced technology testing. Again, much like claims made about Area 51. A place where the military can try out their fancy new tech far away from the prying eyes of the public. And if you were gonna pick a spot for a test flight over your new advanced drone or aircraft, the Australian outback would be about as ideal as it gets. Ever seen Mad Max? Nothing out there but sand and kangaroos. I don't think there's actually any kangaroos in Mad Max, but you get my point. One of the main theories is that Pine Gap is involved in developing and testing advanced drones and aircraft. These drones could be used for anything from reconnaissance missions to lethal attacks. More on that next though. There are also rumors about Pine Gap being involved in cyber warfare testing, so developing new ways to protect against hacking or creating offensive strategies to mess with enemy computers. That's really the best way I can put it without doing a deep dive into exactly what hackers do on this kind of scale. I don't really know much about hacking other than the error messages I'd get that would screw up my janky old PC in the days of LimeWire. One of the biggest conspiracies is that Pine Gap is involved in operating spy satellites. I'd say a big part of this is the fact that it's jointly operated by the United States and Australia. It's partly run by the CIA, so that leads to some speculation for sure. It's rumored that Pine Gap plays a huge role in monitoring communications, radar, and other electronic signals from all over the world. The facility's remote location and the sophisticated tech make it a pretty ideal setup for controlling and receiving data from spy satellites orbiting Earth. There's a lot of speculation that Pine Gap works with various intelligence agencies to gather information on foreign military activity, enemy organizations, and just various global threats. I mean, this is barely even in the realm of conspiracy. It is a fact. It's involved in intelligence gathering, so I don't think spy satellites are really all that much of a stretch. It's really more of a question of, well, what exactly does this entail? Of course, they don't provide specifics because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the whole spying thing. What you're looking at here is rock art found in Sego Canyon in Utah. Some of this stuff looks very interesting. These petroglyphs, some more than 8,000 years old, feature these mysterious figures with large, hollow eyes and often no arms or legs. Some even look like they have antennas. To fans of the ancient astronaut theory, this looks like possible evidence that extraterrestrials came to Earth long, long ago. One of the most famous images is known as the Barrier Canyon Holy Man. This one is very eerie. I mean, just what is this thing that the smaller, dark figures are surrounding? Is it meant to be a god, or could it be a depiction of something they really saw, something from another world? Well, researcher Polly Schaafsma thinks that these figures were probably created as part of shamanic rituals, not encounters with aliens. That the figures with strange eyes and legless bodies might represent spirit beings or supernatural entities that shamans, spiritual leaders of the time, claimed to have contacted during trance-like states. According to Schaafsma, shamans often believed they could travel to other realms using hallucinogens to connect with these divine beings for guidance. What exactly are these figures wearing on their heads? Some say they look a lot like helmets. These figures are part of the Val Camonica petroglyphs in Italy. They're often mentioned when the concept of ancient alien astronauts is brought up. You know, because isn't everyone talking about this stuff all the time? These petroglyphs, which date back over 10,000 years, show a variety of different images. Some of them are pretty standard stuff, animals, symbols, godlike entities, but some of them, especially the two astronaut-looking guys, look way more sci-fi than anything you could expect from ancient humans. So did these ancient humans record encounters with extraterrestrials, or are we just seeing what we want to see? At the end of the day, we can never really know for sure unless we somehow manage to invent time travel, which I really hope we do. In the tribal Bastar region of Chhattisgarh, India, a set of ancient rock paintings were rediscovered in 2014, and they're pretty crazy looking. Discovered near the town of Charama, the paintings date back about 10,000 years, and archaeologist J.R. Bhagat was immediately fascinated by how much of them seemed to look like aliens and UFOs, and I definitely see it. Some seem to show humanoid figures with antennae descending from the sky, others seem to be flying in disc-shaped crafts with the 3 legs coming out from the bottom. In a few images, the figures are shown wearing what appear to be spacesuits. Now, Bhagat was pretty much full on with the alien stuff. He actually made it pretty clear that he thought there was a very good chance these paintings represented ancient humans' encounters with extraterrestrials, or at least their imagination of alien beings from out in the stars. Locals from the area also have legends of ancient beings known as the Rohela people, which translates to the small-sized ones. And they have stories of these entities landing in flying machines, abducting villagers and taking them away, never to be seen again. Could these rock paintings be depicting those very same sky visitors, or are these images just products of the artist's imaginations? The Wandjina cave paintings of the Kimberley region in Australia have fascinated people for centuries. These paintings show figures with these large black eyes, white faces, and no mouths. Often surrounded by halos or what sorta look like helmets. They're unlike anything we'd expect to see in Aboriginal art, which has led to this theory that these could be depictions of alien beings. Now, the Wandjina are considered powerful spirit beings in Australian Aboriginal culture, believed to have come from the sky during the dream time. They're said to have created the land and its people before disappearing into the earth or returning back to the stars. But it's really hard to look at these images here and not see your stereotypical alien, isn't it? Why are they painted this way? Could these ancient beings really have been extraterrestrial visitors? In the heart of the Sahara, there is a place called the Tassili Najer, a massive sandstone plateau in southern Algeria. First of all, the landscape just looks otherworldly. It looks like another planet, which makes some of the rock art even stranger. The rock art, which includes about 15,000 paintings and carvings, is considered one of the richest archaeological sites in the entire world. The most famous part of the Tassili rock art is from what's called the Round Head period, which dates back around 6,000 to 8,000 years, and these images, they're definitely out there. The figures painted on the rocks have big round heads, no real facial features, and some even have strange, almost alien looking features like this one here with the elongated head. Another famous image, known as the God of Safar, almost looks like a humanoid wearing some sort of strange suit. And some of the other figures look like they're wearing diving helmets or spacesuits. Of course, others argue that these could just be representations of ritualistic masks or ceremonial dresses from ancient times. Whatever they are though, these paintings give us an incredible look into the life in the Sahara thousands of years ago.
Number 10. Recent sighting. Middletown was shaken by an extraordinary event last month as residents reported witnessing a display of rotating green lights hovering above them. The inexplicable sighting, which occurred around 10:30 p.m., left many in awe and pondering the possibility of extraterrestrial activity. One individual, Caden Little, managed to capture the event on video while on Jerry Couch Boulevard. Caden described his initial reaction as a mix of fear and fascination, exclaiming, "I instantly thought like we're under attack by aliens. It was scary." Fortunately, the lights abruptly disappeared without any hostile action, providing some relief. Eyewitnesses, including Bryce Garrick, observed the lights rotating in a clockwise motion before swiftly darting across the sky and vanishing. The bewildering speed at which the lights maneuvered ruled out the possibility of drones, according to Brian Simpson, president of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society. So what was it? Who knows, but my bet is aliens. Number 9. The coin incident. At 7:30 p.m. on October 18, 1973, American Airlines Flight 21 encountered a UFO near Mansfield, Ohio, and reported it. This would be the first of dozens of sightings reported in the area that night. However, the most astonishing one took place 3 hours later and became known as the coin incident. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an Army Reserve helicopter piloted by Captain Lawrence Coyne and a crew of 3 men was flying from Columbus to Cleveland when, somewhere around Mansfield, they noticed a red light on the horizon. They then realized that the object was heading straight for them at a high rate of speed. Coyne quickly descended to avoid collision, but as the men were preparing for impact, the object came to a halt in front of them and projected a green, pyramid-shaped beam over the helicopter. At the same time this was happening, the men reported the helicopter being pulled up and towards the UFO. However, it then let go and darted out of sight. The incident lasted 5 minutes. The men described a gray, metallic-looking dome-shaped object with a red light on one end and white light on the other. Now, interestingly, after the incident, according to one crew member, the helicopter never worked right again. Now, this whole incident was seen from the ground by a mother and her 2 children who pulled their car over to watch what was going on. They reported seeing the helicopter chasing an object that they said looked like limp, pear-shaped, and as big as a school bus. Number 8. Earliest photographs. A photo taken in St. Paris, Champaign County in 1932 is considered one of the earliest possible photographs of a UFO ever recorded. It shows George Sutton, a local resident, and what appears to be a classic UFO-shaped object over his left shoulder. Skeptics say the object is simply a street lamp, but according to the folklore that surrounds this image, there were no electric streetlights along this road in 1932, nor are any wires or poles visible in the image. Now, this photo is intriguing because it predates the flying saucer NASA craze of the late 1940s and 50s. It was taken before the alleged Roswell UFO crash in 1947, and it was 6 years prior to the broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, when some people believed aliens were attacking Earth. In other words, the person who took this photograph either captured a street lamp, a real UFO, or was way ahead of the curve in terms of pulling off a good hoax. But I'd like to think it's a real UFO. Number 7. The Carnival. As a way to raise money, Father Gregory Miller decided to host a carnival in August of 1949. The church sought help from Sergeant Donald R. Berger, and on the first night of the carnival, sometime after 8 p.m., he was operating the searchlight when it came upon a massive object in the sky. His log states the object was stationary, appearing as a glowing disc. When I moved the searchlight away, the disc continued to glow. He estimated the object to be around 25,000 feet high and reported that the sky was clear with a thin haze at altitude. More than 100 people saw the object that night, including Father Miller. Maybe nothing more would have come from this incident, but the next day, local newspapers carried stories about strange lights being reported all over Cincinnati, not just at the carnival. At least 3 major newspapers in the area ran stories about the sightings, so it definitely was something. Number 6. 86-mile police chase. In Portage Country in 1966, law enforcement officers from several jurisdictions either witnessed or chased a UFO for 86 miles into Pennsylvania. The incident is considered one of the most thoroughly documented UFO cases on record. Portage County Sheriff Deputy Dale Spar and Second Deputy named Wilbur Neff came upon the UFO around 5:30 a.m. on April 17th. They were investigating an abandoned vehicle and they heard a humming or buzzing noise behind them, and they turned to see a UFO hovering just above a nearby tree line. A bright cone-shaped light came from beneath the object, illuminating the ground. They called into dispatch, which told them to keep an eye on the object. Just then, the object began to quickly move away. The two decided to give chase, and near the state line, a local police officer saw the object, followed by Spar and Neff chasing it. He decided to join in on the action. However, a short time later, just as the sun was rising, Spar began to run out of gas, so he and Neff and the local police officer pulled into a gas station, where they watched the object ascend several thousand feet into the sky, and then straight into outer space, and, well, that was that.
A top secret exchange program between the United States government and planet Serpo, located in the Zeta Reticuli star system, aka the planet of the short grays. The project was allegedly created under the administration of President John F. Kennedy after the US government saved the life of an alien, EVA-1, who crash landed on Earth back in 1947. Entirely grateful and forever indebted to humanity, the alien began working with the US government and teaching them about his home planet, Serpo. When EVA-1 died, he left behind communications technology, which the government then used to eventually get into contact with other Serpo natives. That is when the government made arrangements to send 12 specially trained astronauts to planet Serpo so that they may learn about life outside of our atmosphere. In order to reach Serpo, the 12 astronauts had to travel through a wormhole, after which the majority of them got sick and one unfortunately died of an aneurysm. But of course they kept going and eventually they reached the alien planet. For a decade they studied life on Serpo before returning home and assuming entirely new identities in order to protect the security of the mission. Fair enough, I suppose.
So what are the origins of this Project Serpo tale? Well, like with most conspiracies in the modern age, it started gaining popularity online and took off from there. It all started in 2005 when a series of anonymous emails began circulating among UFO researchers and enthusiasts. These emails, which were allegedly from a retired US government official who remained anonymous, laid out this insane story about an extraterrestrial exchange program. We'll talk more about this anonymous individual later. The Project Serpo story started making the rounds way faster than these types of stories would have back in the day. It was 2005, the internet was still relatively new in the grand scheme of things anyway, and the UFO community was just hungry for new sensational stories. And this one, it's pretty much the definition of sensational.
Remember that alien that I mentioned, EVA-1, that crash landed to Earth Earth in 1947? Yeah, well, that was actually the Roswell incident of 1947, and also the first time the US government supposedly made contact with aliens. As many of you are probably already aware, in 1947 an unidentified object crash landed on some farmland in Roswell, New Mexico. When Area 51 was alerted of the incident, they rushed to the scene, collected the object, and released a statement saying that what had come spiraling down to Earth a few nights prior was nothing more than a weather balloon. But then they sent the object out to another base for testing, and another, and another. Why? Well, because it wasn't actually a weather balloon. It was an alien spacecraft containing 6 aliens, 5 of which had died in the crash, and 1 of which came to be known as Extraterrestrial Biological Entity Number 1, or EBA-1. EBA-1 was taken to the Air Force facility in Los Alamos, where he stayed until his death in 1952. During this time, he learned to communicate with the military and told them some pretty interesting things.
Now, if the US government is really working with these alien beings, where might they be carrying out their activities? Area 51? Some hidden base in Antarctica? Well, some say they could be operating from an even more top secret place. Dolce Base. Dolce Base supposedly sits deep beneath the Colorado-New Mexico border, close to Dolce, New Mexico. Dolce Base is said to be a secret facility where humans and aliens are working together, exchanging ideas and doing all sorts of experiments. Multiple levels deep underground with high-tech labs. The rumors are that different alien species, from the Greys, from planet Serpo possibly, to the reptilians, are working hand in hand with the US government. As to what they're trying to accomplish, probably something really fun and good that we don't really need to bother worrying about. Stories about this place really started coming about from a man named Paul Benowitz, who claimed to have discovered an underground base near Dolce, full of gray aliens and humans. His claims caught a lot of attention, but Benowitz's mental health eventually declined, and he ended up in a mental hospital, passed away in 2003. And there's always been this rumor that he was part of a big, widespread misinformation campaign.
As I said, during EBA-1's time on Earth, he informed the US government of quite a few things. One being that Serpo natives, Ebans as they are referred to by humans, had actually been visiting Earth for the last 2,000 years with no issue. But unfortunately, this time new Earth radar technology that they don't have on Serpo caused the ship to go haywire and crash, killing the majority of the crew. In 1949, a similar thing happened. 6 Ebans crash landed, but this time unfortunately none of them made it. When the ship was examined, the military found a communications device, which they worked on with EBA-1 to repair. They got it working and sent out multiple distress signals, but it wasn't until after EBA-1's death in 1952 that they finally got a reply. Communications began between the US military and the Ebans. It took a while, but eventually they were able to understand one another. After learning about the 12 deceased Ebans stranded on Earth, the Ebans asked if they could come to Earth and retrieve the bodies. Of course, the military wanted something in return, so they came up with the exchange program. The military wanted tech, but the Ebans said, no, you're not ready for our tech. And so they proposed something else. In exchange for the bodies of their deceased, 12 astronauts could spend a decade on planet Serpo. Furthermore, an Eban would stay on Earth to assist the military. In 1964, the Ebans landed on Earth once again to retrieve the bodies, and Project Serpo, aka Project Crystal Night, as it has also been called, commenced.
The star system where these aliens are supposedly from has been at the center of some of the most famous alien abduction stories in history, including the Barney and Betty Hill abduction. Were these beings from Serpo, Ebans, or Greys, as they're typically called, responsible for abductions like this? The Barney and Betty Hill case is pretty interesting. In September of 1961, this American couple was driving through rural New Hampshire at night when they noticed strange lights in the sky that seemed to be tracking their car's movements. Barney decided to stop the car to get out and have a look, and what he allegedly saw were humanoid figures peering out from a hovering craft. The Hills peeled off as fast as they could, but they later realized they'd lost a pretty hefty chunk of time that they just didn't remember. But as the days passed, they started to remember things. They ended up reporting being taken aboard a UFO where they were subjected to medical examinations by beings described as small, with gray skin, oversized eyes, and tiny little anime mouths, that's the exact way they described it back then. It's a 60s term, anime mouths. Their account was one of the earliest descriptions of the now iconic image of your classic gray alien.
Of course, a regular mission to space is no walk in the park, but a mission to a faraway planet located in a star system entirely separate from our own, that's tough. And apparently so was the training process. It took an entire year of survival, escape, evasions, weapons, and psychological training for the 12 astronauts to become fully prepared for their mission. The crew consisted of scientists, linguists, pilots, 2 doctors, and a security officer. Over the course of a year, along with the standard training, one by one, each member of the crew was buried in a 6 by 5 foot box and kept there for 5 days as part of a training intensive. There was no light, no communication. Just a small air hole that allowed the astronauts to receive food and water and not suffocate to death. It was tough, but they all passed, and the pilots even went on to learn how to operate alien spacecrafts. When it came time to take off, the 12 astronauts, along with 40 tons of gear, which included 10 motorcycles and 3 jeeps, were loaded into the spacecraft using anti-gravity technology, and one even came along to assist in their journey. When the ship was all boarded, each astronaut went to their own individual pod and settled in for the long journey ahead.
Alright, before we get to, what they saw on that journey, let's have a little bit of fun here and talk about something that comes up more than you'd probably think when Project Serpo or just interactions between aliens and humans is discussed. Hybrids. Yeah, aliens creating human-alien hybrids, either through experimentation or, God forbid, actually getting it on. This kind of thing always feels like it's going down the same rabbit hole that creepy online fan fiction does, where it's like, I'm gonna write about my fantasy of Alf impregnating Willie Tanner. I don't know. I'm not trying to shame, live your lives, but the concept of humans and aliens breeding with each other always feels inherently silly to me. With that said though, this does often play into the Project Serpo conspiracy. Those astronauts were apparently on this planet for a while. Who knows who they met? One thing could have led to another. Plus, in all these reported UFO abduction cases, who knows what kind of nasty experiments those Greys could have been doing.
When the crew arrived at Serpo, the first thing they noticed was that it was barren, bright, and hot. Really hot. About 107 degrees Fahrenheit or 41 degrees Celsius. Quickly, they realized why. Planet Serpo had 2 suns, which are shown here in a photograph taken by one of the astronauts. Allegedly. One of the suns was orbited by Serpo, and the other was off in the distance. Because of this, the planet never got dark, and the days were 40 hours long, meaning that their decade-long mission was actually going to take 13 human years. In total, there are about 650,000 Ebens living on the planet in small, separate village communities and houses made of some kind of concrete rubber substance. It was a primitive life, but at the same time, the Ebens were equipped with electricity and incredibly advanced technology. Families generally consisted of a male and female Eben, and each family was allowed to have a maximum of 2 children, which were hidden away until they reached the age of maturity. During their time on Serpo, the astronauts gathered as much information about the Ebens as they could. And if you guys remember, I do believe I mentioned that one of the astronauts died on transit. Apparently the Ebens used that astronaut to clone and create hybrids of, like James mentioned. And it was then that the remaining astronauts realized that they weren't as peaceful as they once thought them to be. When it came time to return home, for some reason, 2 of the astronauts actually decided to stay, and then 2 more astronauts died on the way back to Earth. The surviving astronauts were given a large sum of money and an entirely new identity. That's great and all, but many of them were suffering from radiation poisoning due to the 2 suns and died soon after their return to Earth.
One of the most avid supporters of the Project Serpo conspiracy is a man named Richard Doughty, who we can't really talk about Serpo without talking about this guy. See, Richard Doughty has made some pretty outlandish claims, so outlandish that there's a whole other conspiracy that spawned around him and other government officials like him. Supposedly, Doughty was the man behind those anonymous emails I talked about earlier. Richard Doughty is a retired special agent who used to work for AFOSI, the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. But a lot of people think he wasn't actually investigating UFOs, but that he was part of a team spreading misinformation. Intentionally, basically muddying the waters and leaking supposedly secret info about the government's exchange program with alien beings in order to confuse the public, making it hard for us to tell what's real or not. Of course, the purpose behind the misinformation is, of course, to distract everyone from the actual nefarious things the government is up to. I mean, who doesn't get excited about aliens, right? I'm sure we'd all rather believe that the worst thing the government is doing is working with extraterrestrials instead of them doing some shady stuff at our own expense. Could there be some genuine truth about the planet Serpo thing? I mean, sure, maybe, but you know, just something to keep in mind with stuff like this.
Number 5. October 11th, 1973. October 11th was quite the night for Ohio residents, as there were many UFOs spotted. In Dayton, at least 15 sightings were reported. Many witnesses reported seeing objects covered with red, green, and blue lights hovering over treetops in the area. A Montgomery County Sheriff's deputy reported seeing an oblong object covered with lights that appeared stationary in the sky at treetop level for several minutes until he tried to shine his cruiser spotlight on it. It then zoomed towards him and then shot straight up in the sky. Then in Troy, according to an article in the Columbus Dispatch from October 12, 1973, titled UFO Reports Proceed Boom, on October 11th, Troy patrolman Early Thomas and about 100 Troy residents said they watched a hovering red, green, and white object move across the southeastern sky. Now, just to note, this happens to be the direction of Wright-Patterson. About 15 minutes later, law enforcement agencies in Miami, Champaign, and Logan counties received hundreds of telephone calls after a sonic boom was heard. They received more calls when a second sonic boom was heard just after midnight, and it seems like the aliens had something special planned for that day to me. Number 4. Trumbull County UFO Incident. Featured on the History Channel and numerous UFO documentaries, the Trumbull County UFO incident in northeast Ohio is exceptional because it was witnessed by numerous police officers and a 911 dispatcher, all of whom were being recorded as they spoke back and forth about the strange events unfolding the evening of December 14th, 1994. It was also seen by many members of the public as well. Now, around midnight, Trumbull County 911 began receiving calls from residents about strange low-flying lights in the sky. The dispatcher sent out Liberty Townsend police officers to investigate. One of them was Sergeant Toby Melrose, who saw a light. He got out of his car and looked up to see what he described as a giant circular-shaped object and intensely bright in the center section. It made no sound at all. The object was there for about 30 seconds before moving away. Shaken, Sergeant Melrose decided to chase the object, as did many other police officers in the area. At least 14 law enforcement officers saw the object that night, with all of them discussing it openly on their radios. Number 3. 1973. There were many UFO sightings in 1973 in Ohio and its surrounding states. For example, in Columbus on September 30th, a Franklin County man claims to have discovered a landing site near his home after seeing a strange object in the sky. Weeds at the alleged site are crushed to the ground in a semi-oval area 20 by 30 feet wide. The man says the object whooped down in a zigzag pattern and dropped below the trees. There are several dozen sightings of strange objects in the sky reported in the area that night. Then in Middletown on October 7th, a giant orange-colored cigar-shaped object with 5 discs following it and making no sound is reported flying over the city at 10 p.m. Many people see it, and Wright-Patterson receives numerous calls. Now, these are just 2 examples of that year, but there are many, many more. Number 2. Circleville. On August 26, 2022, Pete Hartinger said UFOs were spotted in the area. An expert on the topic who has seen a UFO with his own eyes, Pete said several people reported seeing UFOs between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., including a man who saw something in the sky as he was traveling on US 23 north of Circleville. He saw strange lights, and going on down, he saw some more strange lights. He knows some other people who saw them too, he said. The man said it wasn't right the way the lights were acting. The lights came down, hit the ground, and went back up, so forget about them being flares. Pete said the man, who wishes to remain anonymous, reported what he saw to the Roundtown UFO Society, a local group dedicated to studying these matters. Anybody who has seen strange, mysterious lights that have been in the sky, please let us know, he said. He said at least half a dozen people saw the lights. One person said they saw orange lights over the fairgrounds, he said, and another person said he saw some military aircraft coming in after he saw those lights. Were they coming in to investigate, or what? Since 1947, there have been several sightings of UFOs in the Circleville area, which is strange. And coming in at number 1 is Ohio is a beacon. According to the Mutual UFO Network of Ohio, MUFON, the state ranks among the top 10 states in UFO reports. Thomas Wortman with the MUFON said, "It's all sorts of things we get. We get the individual who is out walking their dog at night who reports seeing unusual lights that they just can't explain. They see the lights for a few seconds or minutes and they just want an answer." Now the majority of these reports come from Northeast Ohio, and Thomas says about 80% of what comes in the agency can be explained, but about 20% and up being classified as UFOs. Now if you're waiting for the government to admit that aliens do exist, don't hold your breath, because the Time reports that the Pentagon isn't going to say that. But my question is, what is so special about Ohio?
The Cocknose Stone is a massive 42-foot by 26-foot stone in West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, covered in strange, grooved spirals, geometric shapes, and over 90 mysterious cup and ring carvings. The markings are believed to date back around 5,000 years, making the stone one of the finest examples of Bronze Age rock art in Europe. It was discovered by Reverend James Harvey in 1887. What makes the Cocknose Stone so intriguing is not just the sheer number of carvings on it, but some of the odd features like the pre-Christian cross, 2 pairs of carved footprints, each with only 4 toes. Why only 4 toes? Could this be a symbol, or could it mean some kind of otherworldly influence? In the 60s, the stone was repeatedly damaged by vandals, so in 1964, archaeologists decided to cover it up to protect it. The stone was buried for decades, but about 8 years ago it started being unearthed again. And this unearthing, of course, brought a lot of attention to the mysterious carvings once again. Some theorists, especially those into the ancient astronaut idea, think these carvings could be evidence of alien visitors from the past. The weird shapes, the footprints, is it just ancient art, or could it be something more? In the Talampaya National Park in Argentina, there's a mysterious collection of ancient petroglyphs carved into some of the rock faces. The petroglyphs date back thousands of years, with some estimates putting them around 2,000 to 3,000 years old. I mean, does this not look a bit like a person in a spacesuit to you? I mean, it's very rudimentary, but I could see it. Some of the figures also have large round heads with long thin bodies and arms. Others have bizarre elongated faces or oversized eyes. It could just be stylistic, of course, but it's easy to see why some people say these might be representations of ancient encounters with something from beyond. The Judicula Rock is this massive boulder in the mountains of North Carolina, full of some of the most intriguing sets of petroglyphs in the United States. The rock itself is covered in over 1,500 symbols, including cut marks, spirals, tracks, and what some believe to be winged shapes and claw-like imprints. But what do these designs actually mean? Some think the petroglyphs may represent a map of the surrounding landscape, showing hunting trails, rivers, and landmarks that were important to the Cherokee people. The Cherokee also have their own legends connected to the rock, including stories of Judicula, a mythical creature described as this slant-eyed master of game. The rock is considered spiritually significant to the Cherokee, and it was part of an old trail connecting sacred sites. With more than 1,500 carvings, Judicula Rock holds more petroglyphs than any other site east of the Mississippi. Its true meaning is still a bit of a mystery, but it is clear that the ancient site was extremely important culturally and spiritually. So we're gonna go back to Sego Canyon for a moment to talk more specifically about the rock art created by the Fremont people. Sego County is a bit of a time capsule, with rock art from 4 different periods: Archaic, Fremont, Ute, and even some Anglo-American additions from the late 1800s. The Fremont style dates back around 600 to 1250 CE. It features these human-like figures that are pecked directly into the rock, and they're very strange looking figures. To me, some of them almost look like your classic 1950s style robots. Very boxy bodies, what almost looks like antennas sticking out of their heads, details that look kind of like buttons and knobs on their bodies. Again, could these figures represent something more than just ancient people? Could they be alien visitors or their technology? By the time the Ute style started coming about around 1300 to the mid-1800s, the art had evolved to include more realistic depictions of animals, shields, and warriors, more standard stuff. And then of course we see the addition of graffiti by settlers and miners in the 19th century. In the hills of Galicia, Spain, there's a fascinating collection of ancient rock art known as the Galician spirals, found on rocks scattered across the region that date back thousands of years, with some estimates putting them at over 4,000 years old. The spirals are pretty interesting because of their unusual-ish design. They're typically circular or spiral shapes, sometimes intertwined with other patterns like zigzags or concentric rings. Spirals are often interpreted as symbolic representations of ancient religious or spiritual beliefs at the time. Some researchers think they could be connected to the sun, cycles of nature, or fertility, but what's interesting is how these shapes resemble motifs found in other ancient cultures from Europe to South America. Some people believe these spirals might actually depict something more extraordinary, like alien encounters. The idea is that the spirals with their complex swirling shapes could be taken from symbols on alien visitors' spacecraft. And, you know, I could see that because of how similar these are across the world. Is this stuff humans were seeing everywhere? I mean, they had no contact with each other at the time. Or it could just be something we intrinsically draw. We just like doing those shapes, you know? Take your pick. But with that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video. Another one of the numerous conspiracy theories surrounding Pine Gap is its alleged role as an NSA or National Security Agency listening post. Edward Snowden famously brought this up, and it certainly makes the whole thing feel a lot more credible. According to the theory, Pine Gap is involved in surveillance and data collection, targeting domestic and international communications, using its advanced listening technology to intercept phone calls, your emails. Edward Snowden isn't the only guy to come out having said this, though. There are other whistleblower testimonies alleging that Pine Gap collaborates closely with the NSA to gather intelligence. Their claim is that the facility's ideal location and the powerful antennas make for intercepting large amounts of data, which is then processed and analyzed by intelligence analysts. Another intense rumor about Pine Gap is that it's involved in coordinating lethal drone strikes. Pine Gap is believed to have the tech and connections to control and direct drones used in targeted killings. So we already know they have the technology to efficiently gather intelligence and track targets. So once a target is identified, the data is sent to operators who can launch and guide drones to hit specific targets, often in remote or hard to reach areas. These drones can carry out precision strikes, taking out high value targets with little to no risk to any human soldiers. The idea that Pine Gap could be involved in operations like this, again, stems from the fact that it's another hub for US intelligence and military agencies. So it's no secret that the US has used drones for targeted strikes in various parts of the world, and Pine Gap's advanced technology would be a major asset for this type of thing. Accusations about drone strikes have been denied, but I mean, of course, they're gonna deny something like that. Targeted drone strikes are probably the most controversial part of modern warfare. After one drone strike in July of 2013 in Pakistan, campaigners claimed the intelligence for the strike came from Pine Gap. There was a ton of outrage, and a number of human rights groups called for a UN inquiry into whether the Australian government could be seen as complicit in the strikes alongside the US military. There were even some allegations that Australian officials might have facilitated targeted killing, which would be against international law. Now on to the stuff you've all been waiting for, of course, aliens and UFOs. Pine Gap has been a hotspot for conspiracy theories involving extraterrestrial research pretty much ever since it began operations. Some people are convinced that the facility is hiding evidence of alien life and is deeply involved in studying them and their technology. And this isn't just a situation of like, oh well, a big top secret government facility, gotta be aliens, right? No, there have been a lot of strange sightings in the area surrounding Pine Gap. Some people will even claim that Pine Pine Gap is part of a global network of secret bases that collaborate on extraterrestrial research. Again, the American involvement certainly plays into this, so Pine Gap may be another facility like Area 51, according to the conspiracy anyway, where captured alien technology is reverse engineered. This could mean everything from developing new energy sources to building advanced propulsion systems similar to ones aliens could be using. There's also rumors that Pine Gap has underground facilities specifically designed for housing alien artifacts and possibly even extraterrestrial beings themselves. Let's get into some detail on a UFO sighting specifically, shall we? One of the most talked about encounters at Pine Gap happened early in the morning on December 22nd of 1989. So 3 men were heading home after an all-night hunting trip when something out of the ordinary caught their attention. It was around 4:30 a.m. when they noticed what looked like a door. But it was camouflaged to blend into its surroundings. Suddenly it opened right in front of them, and from behind it there was a huge metallic gray disc. The disc moved slightly, hovering over the base for a few moments. The hunters stood there, frozen in shock, and watched as this disc shot upwards and then vanished into the sky. As they tried to process what they'd just seen, they saw the camouflage door slowly move back into place, sealing shut as if it had never been there. Pine Gap employs around 1,000 people, and most of them live in the nearby town of Alice Springs. The workers are a mix of Australian and US intelligence personnel, but Alice Springs has a large American population, thanks to Pine Gap obviously, and visitors and townsfolk will often say, if you ask any of these Americans about their jobs, the common answer you'll get is that they're gardeners. It's apparently so common that it's become kind of an inside joke. Are all these people who say they're gardeners really gardeners, or could gardener be a cover for the real work these individuals do at the facility? Some people think that these so-called gardeners are involved in secretive operations at Pine Gap. Gardening, it's a pretty low-key profession, makes for a pretty convenient front for intelligence personnel and want to avoid drawing attention. At least that's what I'd say if everyone else hadn't picked that front too. I mean, you know, baker, carpenter, plenty of jobs to pick from, guys. Weather control. No, Pine Gap isn't even safe from accusations of weather control. This theory is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The idea is that the facility has the capability to manipulate weather patterns using advanced technology to create or alter it. And maybe they have help from some of that alien technology they're reverse engineering. Again, even without the possible secret alien technology hidden inside, people see the sophisticated equipment combined with the secretive nature of the facility, and questions start to form in people's heads like, could they be playing God and screwing with the weather? Could they be using methods like cloud seeding or even more advanced techniques, creating rain in drought-stricken areas? That would be nice. Or maybe they're working on ways to weaponize the weather. The concept of weather control isn't entirely far-fetched either. Various governments have been known to have explored weather modification in the past.
Another theory, however, states that Earth is actually the birthplace of all life, all aliens. It's the incubation theory that, to put it quite simply, states that Earth is an incubation ground for all life in our universe, and that once a civilization reaches a point of high enough intelligence, they leave to colonize other planets. If this is true, it makes sense why aliens who have gone through the same process wouldn't want to interfere with our own. This is our chance to prove to the rest of the universe that we are not the runts of the litter, but that we have the capabilities to evolve into a species that can branch out into the universe on our own. The same way people who make documentaries about nature aren't supposed to step in when a lion tries to eat a gazelle, there is an unspoken rule that prohibits aliens from interfering with our development until we have reached that final stage. And then of course there is zoo theory, which is similar to incubation theory in that aliens have decided not to interfere with our existence, but different in that zoo theory does not follow the notion that all life in the universe began and evolved on Earth. What's neat, or perhaps terrifying, about zoo theory is that it covers the idea that while we have not yet been able to observe extraterrestrial life forms ourselves, they have certainly been able to observe us, and they've been doing it for centuries. If this really is the case, I wonder if Earth is the entire zoo, or just one of many exhibits in a giant cosmic roadside attraction called the Milky Way. It's Anyone's guess, really. Now, much like how in order to communicate with aliens via signal beam, we would have to send our communications to the exact right spot at the exact right time, the reason why we haven't seen aliens could just be a timing issue. It's entirely possible that aliens existed long before our current time. Maybe they were around for the beginning of humanity, and maybe they even visited Earth early on in order to aid with some architectural projects like the pyramids and Stonehenge, but now they're gone. Extinct, dunzo, we missed them, and they're not coming back. I feel like this theory makes a fair bit of sense when you consider the references made in ancient texts to godly humanoid figures that are now, for some reason, nowhere to be found. Perhaps extraterrestrial life forms knew they were dying out and stopped on Earth to keep their existence from becoming nothing but stardust. On the other hand, of course, perhaps we aren't late, but we're early. According to Abraham Leob of Harvard and Raphael Batista and David Salone of the University of Oxford, the chances of life on other planets is actually set to grow much higher in the distant future. I mean, life on Earth developed 30 million years after the Big Bang, and it's still in the early stages. So who's to say that in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 million years, the galaxy won't be teeming with various intelligent life forms spread out across the cosmos? I mean, it makes sense, but so do the rest of these theories. Anyways, the likelihood of us being alone in this universe is slim, but the likelihood that we are lone intelligent beings in this universe because the rest of life is still in single-celled stage 1 is much more probable. The dark forest hypothesis is another possible reason for our lack of alien communication. Basically, the hypothesis states that the reason we have not yet crossed paths with any other life form is due to a drive towards self-preservation and a fear of being destroyed by another hostile, undetected civilization. I mean, to be fair, if I were part of a peaceful, albeit guarded, civilization making my way through the cosmos, and I stumbled upon humanity, I would 100% be absolutely terrified. We're scary, there's no denying it, don't even try. And what if there is another civilization out there even scarier than us? I don't want us to be looking in the wrong cosmic corner one day and accidentally run into our doom. Like, you wouldn't go looking into the corners of a dark forest to figure out what's lurking there that could possibly kill you, so why are we doing it in our universe? Furthermore, it's likely that out of this sphere, extraterrestrial species are not only not looking for us, but also actively working against being found. But then again, on the other hand, maybe aliens don't exist and we really are alone, floating through the vastness of space, inching closer and closer to our impending doom that will one day come in the form of a massive quasar swallowing our galaxy whole. Who knows? I've been your host, Hannah Thompson. I'll see you next time.
Back to alien life. We've all heard the conspiracy theories about UFOs, but have you heard the stories about alien bases hidden underwater? Take the Solomon Islands, for example, where locals have told stories for centuries about strange lights in the sky that disappear into the ocean. What could be going on there, I wonder? It's not just the Solomons either. There have been sightings of unidentified objects hovering over water all around the globe, including mysterious UFOs and glowing lights in places like Alaska and the Mediterranean. Some even claim that they're underwater alien bases. Now, NASA doesn't come out and confirm any of these stories, of course, but they've been involved in some strange underwater research, especially when it comes to studying deep sea environments. Could they know more than they're letting on? Maybe the deep sea is the perfect cover for whatever alien activities are going on beneath the surface. Could NASA be holding back info on alien life in our oceans? Look, it wouldn't be the first time the space agency has kept secrets. Of course, it's not just aliens and volcanoes lurking in the deep. The ocean is home to some of the scariest known creatures imaginable, many of which could pose a real threat to anyone exploring. Giant squids, great white sharks are more well known, but there's a whole list of lesser known creatures too, like the cookie cutter shark, for example, which can and has been known to take chomps out of ships. The deep sea is full of danger encounters like that, and there's always the possibility of running into something much bigger and far more dangerous than anything we've encountered so far. Think of it this way. In space, it's very unlikely you're gonna run into some dangerous form of life. I mean, deeper out, there's a higher chance for sure, but in the ocean, there are more immediate threats that we know of. Deep sea explorers have reported odd encounters with hostile creatures, and while some of them are definitely just internet folklore, others aren't. Like a case in 1978, when the USS Stein, a Navy ship's sonar equipment, was shredded by what they think was a massive-sized squid. This one is downright weird. NASA's discovery of a city of lights in the middle of the ocean where there's no land to be found. Back in 2012, NASA teamed up with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or the NOAA, to release a nighttime map of the Earth. Everything looked normal, except for one bizarre anomaly off the coast of Argentina. The map showed a strange cluster of lights in the middle of the ocean, and it looked like a city complete with patterns that almost resembled an arrowhead or even the Eiffel Tower. The only problem, there's no land in that area, so how could lights be shining there? NASA claimed these were just fishing boats probably, but could there be something bigger going on? Something that for whatever reason, NASA doesn't want us to know about. Well, it wouldn't make sense for me not to mention the triangles. And what do I mean by triangles? Well, I'm talking about areas in the ocean where weird, often terrifying things happen. We've all heard of the Bermuda Triangle, but did you know there are other ones, like the Michigan Triangle? These are locations known for bizarre incidents where ships, planes, and even entire vessels have been known to just vanish without a trace. The Bermuda Triangle is famous for incidents like the disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, the USS Cyclops in 1918, and the mysterious vanishing of Flight DC-3 in 1948. And there are some spooky theories as to what's happening here. Could it just be dangerous weather? Sure. But others think there's something weirder, possibly, like electromagnetic interference messing with equipment. No one really knows for sure, but what is clear is that there are just too many unexplained disappearances to ignore. And finally, we've got an eerie story from the beaches of England. In 2011, 87 unexploded World War II bombs washed up on Calshot Beach. Now imagine walking along the beach and stumbling across dozens of old bombs. A 5-person bomb squad was sent in to handle the explosives. They cordoned off the area to keep people safe. The bombs were carefully stacked offshore during low tide, and when the tide came in, they were detonated. Luckily, no one was harmed, but it was a close call. Now, this is just one incident. There's still plenty of unexploded ordnance out there. The US government has even reported that 6 nuclear bombs went missing in the ocean, never to be found. NASA's aware of these potential threats, and it makes sense why they'd probably be cautious about venturing into the deep sea. The ocean could be hiding much more dangerous things, and when it comes to losing nukes in the water, yeah, I wouldn't blame them for wanting to steer clear of that. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. This video is about photos from history that scared historians. We found some of the scariest photos in history, and these are some of the weirdest things we ever seen. What are you guys waiting for? Click the video now to find out more.